Hello Heathlands at home, and welcome to another art session for us on this bank holiday Monday. So this isn't our usual live session that we do at 1:30 on a Monday afternoon. I'm actually at Heathlands here on Thursday before the bank holiday weekend, and I'm recording this session for you as it's a bank holiday on Monday. So this week, this Monday, for our art session, what I thought we'd do is something a little different to what we normally do. Because normally we've been doing a lot of origami. So instead, this week, what I thought we'd do is a bit of sewing. Now, we were very fortunate over the past couple of weeks to be donated some absolutely amazing material called binca. Now, binca is a bit like cross-stitch fabric, except it's got slightly larger holes. So I'm going to bring some binca examples to the camera for you to have a look at. So this is binca. As you can see, it comes in different colours, and I'm using some scraps that we've got left over. Now, as I say, we were very fortunate to be given some binca recently. The mobile's doing its thing again. I'm going to have to go in and out. So we've been running out of binca because a lot of our guys have been doing a lot more arts and crafts recently. So we didn't have much left. And a lovely lady on Facebook called Sheila messaged me and said, "Can I buy you some?" So we are exceptionally grateful to Sheila. Thank you so much for buying us our binca. And this is the first proper project that we're going to do with it. So as I say, you're going to need some binca or some cross-stitch fabric. And the other thing you're going to need is some embroidery threads or some yarn, some wool. So I've picked out some lovely colours here, I hope you can see. My daughter's favourite colours are turquoise at the moment, so I've picked out some turquoise that I might use later. You can use whatever colours you like, and you can use embroidery threads as well, although embroidery threads are a little finer, so they might not show up quite as well. So I've already made what we're going to do as an example, and what we're going to do with our binca is we're going to make bookmarks. So they're a little rough and ready, but they're a great way to practice your sewing skills and to learn some new embroidery techniques. So I'll bring my bookmark up to the camera for you again. Hopefully, there we go, you can see. I have made a tassel using Helen Walsh's lovely tassel tutorial on our blog, and what I'll do after the video is I'll link that tassel tutorial in for you. And I've used a few different stitches. So I've used a blanket stitch along this edge, and I've done what's called like a whip stitch along this edge. I've done some cross stitch inside my little heart, and then I've been using long stitches and back stitch to do the lettering and this kind of little swirl design that I've made. So as you can see, it's not perfect, but it's meant to be used, and it's, as I say, it's a great little way to practice some of your embroidery stitches for perhaps a larger project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through what materials we need first. So as I said, we've got our binca and we need some yarn or some embroidery threads. The other things you're going to need are a pair of fabric scissors to cut your binca and your yarn. Anyone who knows Helen and I, we're very precious about the difference between scissors for paper and scissors for fabric. Paper blunts scissors, so you shouldn't use the same scissors for fabric and paper and card. You should have two separate sets, ideally. So if you see anybody using your fabric scissors on paper or cardboard, you've got my permission to tell them off. It's very naughty and it makes them go dull. The other thing you're going to need is a bodkin. Now, a bodkin is a large sewing needle, and it's quite blunt. You can see there. It's a chunky needle and it's blunt. So you need a bodkin. You might need or want a pencil to draw any designs out onto your binca for you. And the other thing I've got is a little piece of corrugated card. Now the corrugated card is what I used to make the tassel, just the same as Helen Walsh showed us in her tutorial. And as I say, I will link that up in the comments or in the title somehow of the Facebook post when this goes live on Monday. So that's our materials. The only other thing to tell you is my bookmark, I've made it, how big? I've made mine about 15 centimetres long and about 4 centimetres wide. Now you can make it bigger than that, but I wouldn't go any smaller personally. But that's just my personal preference. So yes, as I say, I've done 15 centimetres long and 4 centimetres wide. The piece of card I've cut for my tassel, just get my ruler again, that is about 6.5 centimetres long. And again, 4 centimetres wide. Yeah, about this, so about the same width, but not as long. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the camera angle to focus in more on my hands, and I'm going to teach you a few of the stitches that I've used to make our bookmark. So, as I said, I'm going to be explaining a few of the stitches that I've used to make this bookmark for Eva. So the first thing I'm going to show you I think I'm going to pick the yellow to use as our example now, is how to do a whip stitch around the edge. So we're going to need a length of yarn. I'm using black here because it shows up nice and bold on our binca, so it should be easy for you guys to see. So we need a length of thread or yarn. We don't want it too long, so I don't make it much longer than from my forefinger to my elbow, like that. If you use very long lengths of yarn, you can find yourself getting into a bit of a muddle and a bit of a knot. And we're going to thread the yarn onto our bodkin, and then at the other end we're going to tie a knot. Now, as I said, binca has quite large holes, so I tend to prefer to knot it a couple of times at the same place so as it doesn't just pull through to the other side. And you can knot your yarn or your thread however you prefer to do it. But I've knotted that twice, and I think that will be enough for us to make a start. So I'm going to start not right at the corner, but a few holes down from the top edge, and we're going to go from the back up a hole and pull it and make sure that that knot is going to hold, which it is. Now, what we're going to do, normally we go in and out on the same side that the thread has come in. So normally with our stitching, we've come up to the front, so we'd now be going down to the back, but we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to whip the thread or the yarn around to the back again, and then we're going to come up through the next hole down. Now I'm going to carefully try and make sure that my yarn kind of goes in a diagonal direction. So we're at the front again. So I'm going to whip my yarn round to the back and come up in the next hole down. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come and do this closer to you, if the camera will focus. There. So hopefully you can see that I've got these two diagonal stitches where on the front of our work we're going to whip the yarn round to the back, and we're going to come up the next hole down from the previous stitch that we've done and pull it through. So again, instead of going down, we're going to whip that thread round to the back, and we're going to come up on the next hole down. And that is how we do a whip stitch. Now you could choose to whip stitch your whip stitching straight. So instead of trying to pull it down diagonally, you would just go straight like that. Now if I turn my work over, what you'll see is that on the back it's straight and on the front it's diagonal. So if I was doing straight whip stitching for the front, the back would end up diagonal. So it would be the opposite way round. So I'll show you one more time for our whip stitch. We've got our yarn on a hole 1 in from the edge, and we're going to whip that yarn round the back and come up on the hole the next one down. It whips round the back and comes up again on the next hole down. Now hopefully, because I'm already focused, you'll be able to see how that whip stitching is coming together, and you can get into quite a rhythm of it and end up doing it rather quickly. And you can see that our pattern or our edging will grow quite quickly. Now I'm going to sit down again, so hopefully the camera will focus back. I'm going to start doing our next stitch, and the next stitch that I want to show you is another edging stitch. So it's this one here, it's called blanket stitch. If I bring this closer again, is Eva upside down? She is. There we go. So this edging stitch, you don't have to do it as close together as I am, or you can variegate it. But what it does is it does a vertical stitch towards the edge, but then it also has this horizontal stitch as well that runs along the edge of the bookmark. So hopefully you can see the difference. This just whips around. Ooh, we're focused again. Come back, camera. There we go. Whereas this, we kind of loop around, but we also catch the thread as we're going. So it's a little bit more complicated than doing a whipped stitched edge. So I'm going to make a start and showing you how to do a blanket stitched edge. So we're working on the front side of our bookmark again, but this time instead of going into the hole, instead of going around the back and up again, what I'm going to do is the next hole down and then 1 in, I'm going to put my needle into the front. Now this thread that's up here, I'm going to make sure that when my needle comes up through the back, I'm going to catch that thread around my needle. And I'm going to do this a couple of times to make a start. And then I'm going to come closer and show you the effect and show you the stitch closer to, for you to get an idea. So I've done 1, 2, 3 stitches close together. What I think I'll do now is take the stitches further apart to make them even bolder for you to have a look at. So I'm going to come back up to the camera again. Hopefully you can see the difference there. So with our thread in our fingers like this, we're going to go, because we're going wider here now, we're going to count 2 holes down from this one. This one. It's going to go 1, 2. We're going to go into that hole, and when it comes up, we're going to make sure that that thread is behind the needle. So it goes round like that. So when we pull it up, it catches the thread. And just neaten it, tighten it and neaten it. So I'll do that again. I've got my thread held up from the edge. I'm counting down 1, 2 to make a larger stitch. My needle's gone into my work. It's coming up, but it's going through this loop that I've created with the thread going behind the needle. If you just put the needle through, you wouldn't catch the thread. So you need to make sure that that thread goes behind the needle and catches it. And that's what creates our blanket stitch. So I'll show you the effect one more time if I do it slightly closer. So instead of counting 1, 2 to create, So instead of counting 1, 2 to create our large blanket stitch, I'm going to go into the next hole and create a smaller blanket stitch. I'll go into the next hole, up and behind, and make sure that that thread is behind that needle when you come up. And that creates our blanket stitches. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn the work over and I'm going to tie the work off. So you can see the back is nice and neat at the moment as well. When you get started decorating the centre of your panel, it might start to look a little bit messy, but it won't matter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in over and I'm just going to catch a couple of threads and pull my yarn through, and then those threads that I have caught a couple of times, I'm going to go back through again, and then that loop that's been created, I'm going to put my yarn through there as well. And then when I pull it tight, that should secure our work. What you can do if you don't want to go through the loop is you could just go round and round those few stitches 3 or 4 times, and that should also secure it as well. So now that we've secured this end of our work, what we need to do is trim it off. So make sure it's nice and neat. Now, I've still got some thread on my bodkin, so I'm going to carry on using the black because it's nice and bold and easy for you guys to see. But because I've cut it off, I need to do another double knot at this end so that when we start sewing again, it doesn't just pop through those holes on our binca. So I think the next stitch that I want to show you, I'm going to show you how to do cross stitch. So cross stitch is, as you imagine, a stitch made of a cross. That looks easier there. So normally when we're doing cross stitch, we would work with holes that are right next to each other. But for the first instance, what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to do a couple of larger crosses for you to see. I'm going to come close again. I think it's easier. So, anywhere on our work, because this is just a sample, I'm not actually doing a pattern or a decoration or anything. I'm going to come up and working from left to right, I'm going to go down 2 holes and across 2 holes. So we count down 1, 2, and then we count across 1, 2, and then we go in there, and that creates our first diagonal. Now if you're going to do lots and lots of cross stitches next to each other, what I would suggest is working all the same diagonals in one and then come back doing the opposite diagonals the other direction. I'll show you how to do both ways, don't worry. But we've gone up 1 corner, and then we've counted down 1, 2, and then across 1, 2. So now from going down there, we're going to count up 1, 2 and come back up through that hole So we're going to come back up and then we're going to go back down on the diagonal to make a square basically. And that's how we do a cross stitch. So what I'll do now is I will show you how to do it smaller. So I'll turn my work around and work this direction. If I'm coming up here, for example, I'm going to count down one and across one. And I'm going to do multiple cross stitches this time. So I've gone down one and across one. Then I'm going to come up one, down one and across one, come up one, down one and across one, and go in. Up one from the back, come back up again, down one and across one, and down again. So you can see I've got this row of lots of little zigzags, little diagonal lines. So to work back over them and to make them cross stitches, we're going to go back up one, up to the front, but we're going to work back the other way. So we're going to work right to left. So we're going to go down one and across one, and that makes our first cross. We go back up one, down one and across one, and go down to the back again. Up one and up from the back to the front, down one and across one, and to the back again. Up one, bring it back to the front, and then down one and across one, and to the back again. And actually, this yarn is quite chunky, so it's difficult to see those cross stitches there. But trust me, those are lovely little crosses. And as you can see, if you use a chunky yarn and cross stitch, you can actually almost colour in with these. So you could do funky shapes if you wanted to, by almost doing pixels of colour with your yarn. So I'm going to show you how to tie off again. Now, if you look at the back here, we've got these nice neat stitches. To tie it off, all I'm going to do is go underneath one, like that, and then I'm going to just go underneath again 3 or 4 times, and that will secure off your work. And then all we need to do, making sure we keep hold of our needle, because that would be silly if not. Come back, thank you camera, is just trim it off. So now that we've learnt how to do whip stitch, blanket stitch and cross stitch, the last thing we're going to learn today is how to do back stitch. Now there's a couple of ways you can do this. I'm going to grab some more yarn, so about the length of my forearm, trim it off, and again we're going to thread our bodkin and tie a double knot in the other end of our yarn, our string or our embroidery thread. So that's one knot, two knots. So now what we're going to learn is how to do back stitch. And again, I can show you to start off with some larger stitches to begin with. So we're going to work from left to right again, or you can work up and down. Whatever works for you actually is the best way to do it. But as always, we're going to start on the back of our work, and we're going to come up from the back through the hole where we want to start our stitching. So now that we've came up where we want to start, we're going to work in straight lines to teach you how to do this. Running stitch is where you literally go in and out, in and out, in and out in a long line, and you end up with a dashed line. Back stitch is where we want to join those dashes up to make a solid line, one continuous line of stitching. So I've come up here, I'm going to count 1, 2 and go back down again. And then I'm going to count 1, 2, come up again. But instead of going forwards, what we're going to do is we're going to go backwards to join the lines up. And this is why it's called back stitch, because we move forwards and then we move backwards. We move forwards, then we move backwards. So we've come up, gone down, come up again. Now we're going to go back to this, not the start, but where the other stitch is. And then we're going to come back up once more where we started our backwards stitch. Then we're going to go forwards again. So we're going to 1, 2, in and to the back, count 1, 2, come back to the front, but as you can see we've got a gap, so we're going to go backwards to join the stitches up. Now that I've done a couple of those, like for you to see here, I'm going to bring it closer once again, give my camera time to focus. So my thread is at the back of my work right now. So I want to count 2 from here, because I'm doing two holes long stitches. So we're going to count 1, 2, so we know that's where I need to come up from the back. Hopefully you can see that. But I need to go backwards to join those stitches up. So I've gone back to make them join up. Now I'm going to come up through that hole again, there, and I'm going to count 1, 2 and go down. So we're going forwards there. Now we're going to count 1, 2, come back up and go backwards again. So back to make the other stitch join up. And what you can do with this is you can work diagonally and you can work up and down, left and right. So at the moment we're working right to left. But what I can do now, because I'm on the forward stitch, I can move this down. 1, 2, go down. 1, 2, come back up again. Go backwards to make it join up. Come back up the other hole, go forwards, but I'm going to change my direction again. So I'm moving forwards this time. And then when I come up 2 holes down, then I'm going to go backwards. And then to work diagonally, if we're going forwards, we can move it up like that. And then if we count 1, 2 down, 1, 2 across in the diagonal again, we can go up and then move backwards to make it join up. And that way, we can kind of draw shapes. So what I'll do is I'm going to leave this as it is, as our sample. I'm going to grab Eva's bookmark again. So hopefully I can point out some examples of how I've drawn with those stitches. So here on the heart, I've used back stitch. I've also used some longer stitches to make the shape slightly different. So I've skipped some holes, and you can do that. So with the V here, from the top corner here down to the bottom point, that's one long stitch. And so's this side, and the A's, the sides of the A, are long stitches as well. This swirl that I've done, where I've kind of taken my thread for a walk, those are all done in individual little back stitches. This star at the end, this kind of starburst, those are all long stitches too. So all you need to do, once you've mastered or had a bit of a practice making your stitches, is to cut your binca out and maybe take a pencil and very lightly draw whatever pattern you want onto your binca. So you could just do geometric shapes and patterns. So I'm going to be a bit bolder with the way I'm drawing on this. Just to show you what I'm doing. You could put letters on, as I say. Letters are great fun because they are just lines joined up in back stitch. So I've just doodled very quickly onto this binca and let it focus again. Hello camera, wake up. So you can see I've drawn some zigzag lines, I've drawn a little square, and then I've drawn the letter B just because I thought it was a good letter to show you. And to get the roundness in the capital B, I've done straight lines, then diagonal lines, then straight lines. And you can design your bookmark however you wish. And to finish it off, all we need to do, as I say, is follow Helen's instruction for how to make a lovely tassel, and that will be our completed bookmark. So I really hope you've enjoyed this little tutorial about how to make a binca bookmark with me today. For anyone who is attending Heathlands and would like to make a bookmark, I have plenty of materials over in the purple bubble, and I think there are plenty in green bubble too. So if you'd like to make one, you can just have a quick word with me or Helen Walsh or anyone who's around. They know where all the materials are, and we will happily give you some to make your own. If you don't attend Heathlands and would like a go at making them, you can get really cheap yarn from places like Aldi, and charity shops are now open. They're a great place to find fabulous bits, odds and sods of yarns. Binca is available online from places like Amazon, or you could go to Hobbycraft, or if you're in Carlisle, or Fun to Do, and they'll be able to provide you some. You could also, if you were wanting to do this and you don't have access to binca, you could do it on a stiff fabric, but you'd need to use a sharp needle, and you'd have to be more accurate with your thread counting to make sure that your shapes were accurate. But I know lots of you are returning to Heathlands to us, and as I say, we've got the materials here for you guys to take part, so just ask us. I hope you've had an absolutely wonderful bank holiday weekend, and I will see you live all again next Monday. Bye guys!